Welcome to this session. This is Chandrakant Shirgumpi, Assistant Professor of English, Srimati Lalita Devi Gursiddappa Sindur, Government First Grade College, Savanuru. In this session, we are going to learn about a story called The Fortune Teller, written by Karel Čapek. This story is prescribed for BA first semester Basic English students of Karnataka University, Dharwad. The learning objectives of this story are to make the students understand about the poet, about the author in brief, to make the students understand the brief introduction of the story, to make students recognize the different characters and their professions, to make students understand the trial scene, and to make the students understand the irony in the life. The learning outcomes of this story are: students will be able to know about the author, they will be able to briefly understand the brief introduction of the story, they will be able to understand the influence of profession on their attitudes, and they will be able to know the skill of fortune teller, they will be able to understand the trial scene, and finally they will be able to know about the irony in the life. In this session, first of all, we shall study about the author in brief, and then we shall have a brief introduction to this story, and finally we shall have the unit-wise analysis and explanation of this story. Let us first of all know about the writer Karel Čapek in brief. He was born in 1890 and died in 1938. He was a famous science fiction writer. He has written many stories, short stories, novels, and essays. He has written in Czech language, and his fame mainly rests on his contribution to Czech literature. His memorable works are War with the Newts, written in 1936. It is a dark science fiction satire on colonialism and fascism. His other memorable work is RUR, that is Rossum's Universal Robots, written in 1920. It is in this fiction that we for the first time find the word robot. Karel Čapek wrote in a time when science fiction was yet to establish itself as a separate genre. If we see his writings, we will come to know that the market quality of Čapek is its intelligence and humor, as well as the variety of subjects which are presented in a very detailed and precise manner. Most of his works deal with ethical aspects of industrial inventions and revolve around mass production, nuclear weapons, and artificial intelligence. A brief introduction to this story. It explores the art of fortune telling from a psychological angle. There are mainly four characters. The first one is Mr. Kelly, a judge. The second one is Mr. McCleary. He is a detective inspector. The third one is Mrs. McCleary. And the fourth and the important one is Mrs. Myers, who is the fortune teller of this story. There is a trial scene in this story where Mrs. Myers is questioned by the judge about her knowledge of cards and about her predictions. The irony of this story is that in the end, even though Mrs. Myers' prediction was based on her false knowledge, it proves to be true. The story is divided into 7 units. Let us know about the first unit. In the first unit, the author begins the story by telling that such a story could not have happened in Czechoslovakia or in France or in Germany except in England. The author tells that the legal process in Czechoslovakia or France or in Germany go as per the law. But it is not so with England, where the judge of this story uses his common sense while giving the verdict. The story is set somewhere at Brampton or Bayswater, a part of Kensington in London, England. The judge mentioned in this story is a magistrate and his name is Mr. Kelly J.P. The writer also introduces a lady by name Mrs. Edith Myers, who is the fortune teller and often called plainly Myers. In the second unit, the author introduces McCleary, a detective inspector. Being a detective inspector, McCleary is doubtful about Myers' business. He wants to know about her real work and her income. He expresses surprise over the thought that even though it is February, she is still sending her servant to buy asparagus. He has also discovered that she has about 12 to 20 visitors every day, varying from char women to duchesses. He doesn't believe his wife's answer that she is a fortune teller. He suspects her profession to be prostitution or spying. Therefore, he asks his wife to go to her and find out her business. In the third unit, the writer tells about Mrs. McCleary's visit to Mrs. Myers. Mrs. McCleary agreed to her husband that she would go to the fortune teller. The very next day she went to visit Mrs. Myers. Mrs. McCleary took the precaution of removing her wedding ring and dressed herself like a young girl and pretended to be appropriately nervous. She waited to be shown into Mrs. Myers. When her turn came, she went in. The old lady in the room told her to sit and asked what she can do for her. Mrs. McCleary told, stammering, that she was celebrating her 20th birthday the next day and she wanted to know her future. At this time, while picking up a pack of cards and shuffling them, the fortune teller, the old lady, asked the latter's name. The fourth unit tells about Mrs. Myers' prediction about Mrs. McCleary. Mrs. McCleary told lie that her name was Miss Jones. Then, by addressing Jones, the fortune teller, the old lady told that she did not do card readings except for old friends. Further, she told that if she would like to split the pack into 5 with her hand, with her left hand, then she would do card readings just for pleasure. Now Jones split the pack of cards into 5 heaps. The fortune teller, the old lady, turned up the first pile of cards and said, "Diamonds, that means money, and the Jack of Hearts, that is a lovely card." The old lady then turned up the second pile, and when she found the Jack of Diamonds and the 10 of Spades, she explained that it meant travel. Further, when she found the clubs, she interpreted as clubs always meant adversity, but there is the Queen of Hearts at the end and it was good. Mrs. Myers turned up the third pile and explained, "Diamonds again, my dear child, you are in for a lot of money, but I am still not sure whether it is you will be traveling or someone close to you." To which Jones told that she had to go and visit her aunt in Southampton. But the fortune teller told that it would be further than that. Then the old lady turned up the fourth pile and suggested that somebody, especially an elderly man, was going to try to stop her. To which Mrs. McCleary exclaimed that probably it was her uncle. Then the old lady upturned the fifth pile and explained that within a year James would be married to a fabulously wealthy young man, a millionaire, a businessman, but before that she would have to overcome obstacles. An elderly gentleman would try to prevent her marriage, and after the marriage she would move far away from that place, overseas most likely. Then the old lady asked Mrs. McCleary one guinea as her fee. Mrs. McCleary expressed her gratitude by paying £1 and 1 shilling from her purse, and taunted the fortune teller by asking what it would cost without the adversity. But the lady denied but the old lady denied by telling that the cards can't be bribed. Further, the old lady asked Jones what her uncle was. Mrs. McClare told that he worked for the police and was a secret agent. The old lady pulled 3 cards out from the pack. She interpreted that bad thing would happen to her uncle and he is in grave danger. So the old lady suggested Jones that he should come and see her to find out more. She also boasted that a lot of Scotland Yard people come and ask her to read the cards for them, and they tell her everything that is worrying them. Again the old lady told Jones to send her uncle to then asked the next person to. In the fifth unit, the trial takes place. Mrs. McCleary returned and told her husband about the things that happened at the old lady's house. The detective inspector, Mr. McCleary, remarked that he didn't like to listen about the old lady. Further, he told his dissatisfaction that the old woman was far too interested in her late uncle in her late uncle. He also told that her name wasn't Myers but Meyerhoff, and she was from Lübeck, and she was a damned German. He expressed his dissatisfaction over her business and grumbled that she was getting stuff out of people which was none of her business, and he complained to higher authorities. The higher authorities took it all seriously, and Miss Myers was eventually summoned to court to appear before the judge, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly began the inquiry. He said to Mrs. Myers, "What is all this business with the cards?" The old lady said innocently that she had to do something for living, and at her age she couldn't go to the music halls and dance. The judge told that he had a complaint against the old lady that she did not know how to read cards properly. And that is just the same as if she were selling bars of clay instead of chocolate. He told that if the people were going to pay a guinea, they were entitled to expect a proper reading. He then said, "Would you kindly tell me why you have set yourself up as a fortune teller when you don't know how to do it properly?" The old lady replied that she tells the people things they like to hear, and the pleasure they get from that is surely worth a few shillings. And sometimes her predictions become true. She gave the example of a lady and told that just the other day a lady said to her that no one has ever read the cards and given her such a good advice, and that young girl lives in St. John's Wood and is getting a divorce from her husband. The judge said, "Here we have a witness to what you have been getting up to. Please tell us about it, Mrs. McLeary." Mrs. McLeary came as a witness and told that Mrs. Myers read the cards for her, and the old lady told that within a year she would be married and that her husband would be a wealthy young man and that they would move overseas. The judge immediately questioned, "Why overseas exactly?" The old lady responded that because there was a 10 of spades in the second heap, and that meant travel, to which the judge objected by telling that the 10 of spades meant good fortune. It is the jack of spades that meant travel. When the jack of spades comes together with the 7 of diamonds, that is when it means travel to faraway places and good fortune. Further, he objected that the old lady had told the witness that within the year she would marry a wealthy young man. He said that Mrs. McLeary is already married to a police inspector, McLeary, 3 years ago. So he asked an explanation for this nonsense. But the fortune teller said calmly, "That is how it goes sometimes. This person came to me all dolled up like a silly girl, and she told me she was 20. She made out she was single. So I foresaw a wedding for her and a rich bridegroom. That is what seemed to me the most appropriate." Then Mrs. McLeary demanded the clarification about the adversity, the elderly gentleman, and the journey abroad, to which the old lady said that she had to say more for a guinea. The sixth unit tells about the punishment. The judge finally told that he had heard enough. He accused that the old lady read the cards in a wrong way, and the fortune tellers must know how to read the cards. He put a fine of £50 on the lady. He further told that there was also a suspicion that she was a spy, to which she told God was her witness. The judge said that since she was a foreigner without proper employment, she would he would order the police authorities to expel her from that country. The last unit, that is the seventh one, which tells about the irony in one's life. It shows the irony of life. About a year later, Judge Kelly happened to meet the police superintendent McCleary, or the detective inspector McCleary, and said, "By the way, how is Mrs. McCleary?" Mr. McCleary said, clearly embarrassed, "Well, the thing is, Mr. Kelly, Mrs. McCleary, the thing is, we got divorced." The judge was surprised to hear this news. He couldn't believe that such an attractive young woman could divorce. Mr. McCleary said, "A young man, a sort of millionaire businessman from Melbourne, went crazy for her. Of course, I tried to stop her, but—" He waved his hand. He told further that they left for Australia last week. Dear friends, so far we have known the story in detail. Here are some multiple choice questions on the story. Please try to read the question and the given 5 options and try to find out the answer. Let us recapitulate. This incident happened in Kensington. There are mainly 4 characters. The fortune teller here is Mrs. Myers. Mr. Kelly is the judge. Mr. McCleary is the detective inspector, and there is his wife, and there is a trial scene and the punishment to Mrs. Myers. The reference for this story is Shalmala, an anthology of poetry and prose, OUP 2017. Thank you so much.